Okay, so everybody please rise. The family comes in. There. You may be seated. The family of Raye Jaffe, her children, Richard and Linda, Sandy and Jay, the grandchildren, Lana and Hallie, and among the many cousins of this family, Howard and Diane Slaughter, Renee and Dave Singer, Alan and Charlie Jaffe, Jerome and Bella Smith. They've offered today prayer that we recite whenever we face difficulties, challenges, sorrow, and loss. We recite today the blessing, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam dayan ha'emet. Praise you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who is the judge of truth. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakachi, Hishem Adonai mavarach. Adonai, you have given, Adonai, you have taken, and still, God, we praise your name. It is customary in Judaism that whenever we are faced with sadness, whenever our hearts are broken, Judaism would have us turn to the book of Psalms to find in this great collection of poetry some measure of comfort and consolation. So read today from the book of Psalms, Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi yagor b'ohalecha, mi yishkan b'har kadshecha. O Lord, do we deserve to enter your sanctuary? How can we merit a place in your presence? We must live with integrity, do what is right, speak the truth without deceit, have no slander on our tongue, do no evil to others, must not mistreat a neighbor, and if we can do these things, then we shall stand firm forever. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo achzar bino deshet yarbitzeni amei menuchot yinachaleni. The Lord is our shepherd, and we shall not want. God has us lie down in green pastures, and God leads us by still waters. God restores our soul, guiding us in straight paths for God's own name's sake. And yea, though we walk through that valley of the shadow of death, we fear no evil, for you, God, you are with us. Your rod, your staff comforts us. You prepare a table before us in the presence of our enemies. Our heads are anointed with oil, and our cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy will follow us all the days of our life, and we'll dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This psalm, this 23rd psalm, is the one that is most often associated with funerals. We have to ask the question, there's 150 psalms in the book of Psalms, some long, some short. Why the 23rd? How did the 23rd get picked to be read on a day such as today? And most people will tell you, well, because this is the psalm that talks about that journey through the valley of the shadow of death, that journey that we all must take. To learn that even there, God will be with us is important. Perhaps one of the most important things that we can know at this time. But I believe that there's another verse in this psalm that is even more important. And that is the verse that says, our cup runneth over. You see, when we have to confront the illness and the pain that leads up to death, and when we then have to walk through that valley of the shadow of death, it is so easy to forget the good times. It's so easy to forget all the happy points in life. And in Raye's life, there is much that can be remembered with happiness and with joy. And I want to call upon her son Richard to speak about his mother at this time.
Appreciate everyone being here. It's quite an honor, especially when it happened so suddenly. And I have other cousins here that aren't first cousins, and I won't name them all, but I appreciate such folks as Bart and Rosalie Agro coming in from Atlanta, and a number of people came in from out of town. And I'm really grateful for that. So I'm going to start off by saying a verse in English, because I don't speak Hebrew very well like my daughter. It's called Home, Home on the Range, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day, because that's the last song that I sang with my mother, and she sang back. She could sing and I couldn't. But I did that because she was beginning to lose all ability to speak due to Alzheimer's. And that was about 4 years ago, when she was still able to sing. And then she couldn't sing anymore. And so I began to try to engage her in conversation. And I couldn't do that, except that I would say to her, sitting right next to her on her couch at Brook Hill, are you Rachel? Are you Rachel Jaffe or Rachel Slaughter Jaffe? And she would hesitate, and with much defiance, she would go, I'm Rachel Slaughter Jaffe. And that told me that she had a real sense of who she was. Now, you may ask yourself, well, why would I quote Home on the Range, a place where my mother had never been? But to someone who's so religious as my mother was, and she was religious, Temple Bethel was her home, away from home. She never missed a Saturday. And like her father before her, who walked, and I just spoke to someone who actually, a moment ago, who lived in grandfather's house. But Mom lived here. She loved Temple Bethel, and she sat always in the same place with our dear cousins, Howard and Diane Slaughter, and then eventually with her caretakers, Donna King, who's right here, and Shirley Ballman, who's right there. My mother was born on June 29th, 1916. She was 6 weeks from 99. Some people say that she fudged her age a year at some point when she had that opportunity. So she really was closer to 100, but we'll call it 99. It's the same thing. Even in the throes of a full-blown Alzheimer's, she could still name the Mahjong tiles before she couldn't speak at all. The last words she said were okay, and then yeah, and ultimately nothing. And eventually, she moved into her caretaker's home where she's been the last 3 years with Donna King. My mom and dad had an almost 50-year romance. It was tender. It was mutually adoring. And I can honestly say that I never saw my father say an unkind word to my mother and vice versa, or speak in an unkind tone. And that's not rationalized memory. That's true. If that ever happened, it was never in front of me. It was tender and it was kind. And it was a mutual devotion and a mutual adoration. They adored each other to the point where when I worked with my dad a year before I went to law school, my father forbid me from telling my mother when I got home what he had for lunch because he did not want to hurt her in case she fixed the same thing for dinner. And that's who they were. But they were also opposites. My dad was a little more like me. He was more of an introvert. He worked. He liked to read. He only traveled for her. When I was young, there were 2 places to go. There were Joy Young's and John's. And my father kidded my mother all the time. And one of the ways he kidded her was that she would insist on sitting, no matter what, at a table and in a place where she could see, and if she knew or if she didn't speak, to every single person that walked through that door. She would not sit anywhere else. And my dad got the biggest kick out of that. My mother was 4'10", 98 pounds. My dad called her the little general. My mother was a bundle of energy. She could never sit still. She would not sit at the table when she cooked for us. She would circle it, going back and forth to make sure that all of us had enough to eat. And frustrating to me, only after we all finished would she sit down and she would eat, because that's what she was. She was a giver, not a taker. And anyone in my family knows, and many of them are here that are in town, they will tell you that when something was going on, they went to my mother, and my mother took care of it. My mother loved to cook. She cooked her famous latkes and her famous mandel bread. And people still ask for that. My poker group of almost 40 years. They still want the latkes and the mandel bread. Dr. Harold Seitlin called me once and he said, you know, your mother, I'm not going to treat your mother if she doesn't bring me some mandel bread. But Mama had a mischievous side, too. She was steely, she was tender, but she was also mischievous. When the Alzheimer's was beginning to envelop her, and she lived at Brook Hill with Donna, Shirley, she would find a way when she was mobile to sneak out and walk to Mountain Brook Village just so she could see people and wander around there. And ultimately, we had to install a lock on the top of the door because she couldn't reach it to get out. Otherwise, we would never have been able to contain her, and she might have gotten hurt. But to really understand her, you have to understand that she, like her father, was a no-nonsense person. She loved to tell the story of my grandfather, who would go to watch my Uncle Maxie, her baby brother, play semi-pro ball, which we had in Birmingham back then. And he was a star. He was short, but he was a star. He was a Stuart Royal of his age. He could do anything. He could do anything. He could do anything athletically, and he was also very smart. He would play at the semi-pro. My mother and as a little girl and my grandfather would watch, and then people would walk up and say, "Mr. Slaughter, Mr. Slaughter, how'd you think your son did?" And he would say, "I wouldn't," in his Yiddish accent, "I wouldn't give you a nickel for it." And that's what she said to me when I told her that I was leaving the district attorney's office and going into private practice to join Bill Broom and other lawyers that are here. She said, and I quote, "Tell me, who is going to come to you?" But, none of us are always right. And I'm glad that she was lucid enough to see that some people did. Although I will say that she never trusted me enough to give me her legal work. All of my friends love my mom. It's rare to see or find out or know that there are very few people on this earth where you probably would have to really search the ends of the earth to find someone to say something negative about Raye, about a person. And I'm sure that I wouldn't hear it, but I doubt anyone in this room has heard a negative word about my mother, because all my friends and all her friends and all people that she met connected to her in a very special way. Even Noah, who's one of the youngest here, knows that, because he connected to her and she connected to him. She was very fond of and frustrated and always looking for me. And I think Martin Dansky would probably tell you that she would be screaming over and over and over again, "Where's Richard? Where's that boy?" And the truth is that if she weren't Jewish, she would require and deserve a sainthood for raising me. Many people witnessed the true Raye when I would return home from college, knock on the door, and she would answer that door, and I'm telling you, her face would explode in a sun shower. It was that diamond bright. I have to tell you that there isn't any doubt about it. She could light up a room, and I could light her up. And I did every single time, even Wednesday, just before she took her last breath. But Mom was an extreme worrier. For 7 or 8 years, my dad had some significant Alzheimer's, never to the extent that Mom did. And she waited on him hand and foot, and she wouldn't eat. She lost 20 pounds, which she couldn't really afford to do. And ultimately, on April 16th, 1997, my father died in my arms. My mother walked in and collapsed. And then she grieved, and then eventually the weight of worrying about his demise lifted from her, and she was able to breathe again and able to eat again. Because that's the intensity of her love and also her fear. Were it not for my mom, I wouldn't have gone to college. I remember having a conversation with Stuart Royal about, he was going to Rice, and he wanted to know where I was going. And I said, I don't know that I am going. But Mama basically said it's either college or the streets. So I took a middle ground. I went to college, and I was still on the streets. But last year of college, and of course Steve Singer was my pledge master, and he whipped me into pretty good shape. And I waited out a year because my grades were so bad. I didn't have Bill Broom's grades and many of your grades. And so I was on a waiting list. I'd gotten in several schools, but I wanted to go to Alabama, and so my mother wasn't going to have that. And I think, Bill, you can relate to this. She said, get in the car. And she drove me down to Alabama. And she met with Dean Christopher. And about 7.5 minutes later, he said, when would you like to report in? Because the little general meant it. Although I was difficult, eventually my mother grew somewhat proud of me. And her grandchildren, and Lana and Hallie. Sadly, she lost her faculties, before she could see my sister's extraordinary documentary or track her husband Jay's prominence to one of the most extraordinary juvenile judges in the country, or to witness my daughter getting her PhD at Harvard, or meeting my daughter's boyfriend, which I'm not sure how words could express that, except to say that he is quite the unusually giving person who really reminds me of my mother. Without a doubt, the greatest gift to us and my greatest accomplishment was finding Donna King, Shirley also, and Vicki, because they love my mother, and the loss of my mother is greater to them and Donna particularly, because for 9 years they were together 24/7, especially the last 5 in their home, last 3 to 5. They slept in the same bed together. And eventually, if you know anything about Alzheimer's, it's a brain disease, and it eventually breaks down all of your motor skills, first your mental faculties. Ultimately, my mother was wheelchair bound, even after she couldn't speak. And then eventually the brain shut down, and when she passed, she was probably about 40 pounds, and she was Donna's baby. And they were connected like anyone could connect to an angel. So if you don't think that angels exist on this earth, there's one sitting there right next to Diane. I'm sorry I've been so long, but you only die once. I want to capture my mother in 2 very brief anecdotes. And I think that it will capture her quite eloquently, or quite poignantly is a better way to put it. My mother was a big baseball fan, but very few people knew that. Jay, you probably did. Now, Jay is very loyal to his baseball team. My sister's boyfriend, Caleb, was sharing with me when we were all in Boston how loyal he is to his my daughter's boyfriend. I'm so sorry. He's too young for her. But and how loyal he was. But my mother had a different loyalty. She was more loyal than all of them. Because my mother only wanted the home team to win. So it didn't matter who played. Her team was the home team. Because she didn't want to disappoint all of those fans that went to watch the baseball game. And the second one is a little shorter. It's old movies. My mother loved old movies, but only ones that had a happy ending. My mother waited, sort of like the Emily Dickinson poem. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves in immortality. My mother, when we left her to go to Boston last weekend, Sunday, my mother was pretty good. I didn't see any problems. But I felt a problem because on the plane, on the way back Wednesday night, right before she died on Thursday, I jotted some things on a paper. I woke up and just started jotting some things on a paper for some eventual eulogy, which unfortunately is today. But Mom, death did stop for Mom because she allowed my daughter Lana to get through her very serious cervical replacement disc surgery. Otherwise, she'd be here. And no, she was okay, which she is. She waited for my sister, Sandy, and Jay to be in Birmingham to see her and say their goodbyes before she left. And she was really hanging on. She's a steely lady. And she waited for me. And when we came over there Thursday around 3, her eyes were fixed, oblique. Very laborious breathing, and everyone kept saying, well, her eyes are completely frozen. And so I said, well, give me a minute. And I walked up, and I did this around 15 times. And I cradled my left hand around her head, and as it rested in my head, her breathing, which was very laborious, her breathing calmed, and her eyes moved. And she recognized me and everyone in that room. Linda, Sandy, Jay, Donna. And then 20 minutes later, she took her last breath in the presence of Donna. She didn't suffer because of that angel. So she let go, and she went to a place with blue skies to join my dad in final peace and happiness, in a place of happy endings, home on the range of God. Thanks for your patience. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Rabbi, for your comforting.
There are a few others who wrote some words that asked me to read today. One, of course, is Sandy. It said, Raye was a devoted mother who would do anything for her children. Sometimes, maybe too devoted, but that was her way. She loved seeing all my friends, and when some of them heard that she had passed away, they sent messages to me about how fond they were of her, and the strong memories of how she took such a keen interest in them. She was more accomplished than she let on. It was only as an adult that I learned that she was the pianist for the temple choir. And my suspicion is there were more areas like that where she flourished but kept them hidden. She taught me to try my best at everything I attempted, and to be nice to all I met and speak well of them. And some of the specific things she taught me were to be a bit wary of buying white clothes, especially a white coat, because it always gets dirty. Not to get a suitcase so big you can't carry it yourself. And not to give art as a gift to people, because then they'll feel obligated to hang it. She was known for being friendly and engaging with strangers in a way that I most likely found embarrassing as a child, but I'm proud to have as my own character trait now. Though in Boston, that behavior is considered somewhat aberrant, rather than par for the course as it is in Alabama. She did cook a lot. What she cooked well, and my daughter Hallie in particular remembers her tomato and alphabet soup. I remember how she taught Hallie to eat matzo ball soup, which she still loves, only now from Raines in Connecticut. And what she is most famous from the kitchen, of course, as we've mentioned, is her mandel bread. She loved sharing with friends, even sending some in the mail, which was an amazing treat. She loved her husband, devoted to the children, and will be so very, very missed. We all loved her so. And Hallie sent some remembrances as well. She said, first of all, to talk about the famous mandel bread. And she loved to cook, make meals for the family, and she said she'd never sit still, circling the table to make sure everyone had food. I never, she said, saw her sit and watch a TV program. How she hated the video recorder. Every time that every one of our home videos has Raye saying, "Turn that off, it's enough." She loved going to temple and sat with Diane and Howard and Ethelene. And it was sad when she no longer knew all of her temple friends and unable to go anymore. She loved playing mahjong with friends who lived with her at Brook Hill. She was kind, funny, loved her family, was a great mother, grandmother, and wife, and in-law to all her sisters and brothers-in-laws. She sent money to every charity that sent something in the mail. We didn't know until we started managing her bills. Hence, the mail was plentiful, and Raye had many address labels and notepads with her name on it. This was coming long after she was able to contribute. Today is a day of sadness and grief. There's a great deal of pain in our hearts. So maybe it won't be today or tomorrow, or next week, or next month even, but soon. It will be soon. So as we sit back and recall all these happy memories that we've shared here today, we will agree that in spite of the last years, the happy memories remind us that our cup runneth over, and that we were most blessed to have Raye in our lives. It was the great sage Ben Sira. Oh, no, wait. Before I do that. There's some notes here from Linda and Jay. I want to recall these memories as well. Linda said that when her children came in, she was so happy. When Richard was on TV or in the news, her eyes would just light up and sparkle. We used to sing together. She loved to eat, and she loved sweets, especially cakes, cookies, and fruits. And she loved to spend the holidays with us. And Jay remembered that she was marvelous with our daughter Haley. And Haley holds her dear in her heart, even though she wasn't able to be here today. She treated me, he said, like a prince, like visiting royalty. She was a nurturing, loving mother. I wanted to make sure that everyone was well fed and happy. And finally, as has already been mentioned, but we spoke about this a lot, about Donna King, who for the last 9 years cared for her with love and compassion and devotion. The family has expressed it in many, many different ways, how grateful they are for all you did for their mother. And also to Shirley, who worked with Mom so much on the weekends, special times. It was the great sage Ben Sira who wrote, "We should not fear death. We are all destined to die. That we share with all who ever lived and with all who ever will be. We should cry for the dead. We should not hide our grief. We should not restrain our mourning, even though we must remember that continuing sorrow, yes, continuing sorrow is worse than death. When the dead are at rest, their memory must be a source of peace, and we must find consolation. Death is better than a life of pain. And eternal rest is better than the constant sickness. We cannot seek to understand what is too difficult for us, and we cannot search for what has been hidden from us. We can't be preoccupied with what is beyond us. We've already been shown far more than we can comprehend. As a drop of water in the sea, as a grain of sand on the shore, these are our few days when compared to eternity. The good things in life, they last only a limited number of days. But a good name and a good reputation, these endure forever. Rabbanu Shalom, Master of the universe, Creator of heaven and earth, man and woman, be gracious now to your children who mourn. May the light of your presence, God, dispel the gloom of absence that is so keenly felt on this sad day. Bless this family with your compassion. Empower them with your love. Touch them with the fullness of your heart, that they may be granted an inner peace. Was it not you, God, who said, "Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will sustain you with my power." As we have remembered this day, the blessings in Ray's life, we ask your eternal God to remember that promise to us as we say, Amen. Ask everyone at this time to please rise. The memorial prayer. Elohai Slichot Chanun Brachum Erech Apayim Rav Chesed Hamatzei Kapra Pesha Hakra Yesha V'Nuchad Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShekhinah B'Ma'alot Kedoshim U'Taharim G'Zarakia Masirim Et Nishmat Rachel Bat Meir Shel Alachali Olama Ana B'Harachamim Zachrala L'Tova Kol Zichioteha V'Tzidkoteha B'Artzot HaChaim Uvtach la shari tzedek v'ora shari chemla v'chanina v'seiter k'nefecha hasireha la'olamim. V'tzor b'tzorachim nishmata nehud nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom amishkava v'namar Amen. God of forgiveness, you are gracious and compassionate, patient and abundantly kind. Grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure. To the soul of Rachel Bat Meir, to the soul of Raye Jaffe, who has gone now to her eternal home. Merciful God, we ask that you remember all the worthy and all the righteous deeds that she performed here in the land of the living. May this wonderful wife and mother and grandmother, this good friend, find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life, and may she rest in peace, as we say, Amen. Friends, the interment will take place right after the service at the old Beth El Knesset Israel Cemetery. Not the newer one, but the older one. Following which, the family will be gathering at Richard's home at 106 Mountain Brook Park. They have told me that the parking is very limited inside the development, but it's a small little development. And you can park across the street, across Montclair, actually, at the 3928 building, which is directly across the street from the entrance. Please be careful crossing the street. The family will only be sitting Shiva today through 8 o'clock tonight. I can tell you that already some of you have shared stories of Raye with the family that they didn't know. So if you have a Raye story, and this is the time to share it with the family. And if you don't have a Raye story, you now have a bunch. But if you're looking for more, that's where you can hear those stories be told at Richard's house this afternoon. On behalf of the family, I want to thank all of you for your comforting presence here today. We're going to have the family leave now and go. We ask those of you who will be going to the cemetery to go directly to your cars. I believe there are directions to the cemetery available. If you're going to be going, you can follow the hearse and the procession if you'd like. Before we leave, there is a very, very old tradition that will be done. We will open the synagogue doors at that time and allow Raye to have some time here in the synagogue that she loves so well. And then we'll be on our way. Thank you all today.